There is a quiet corner of the mind where the future is not a horizon to explore, but a shadow to avoid. For some, newness does not arrive as an opportunity. It arrives as a slow, creeping chill. It is not that they do not desire change, but that the body remembers something the mind has forgotten, a lesson written in an old language, warning them that the unfamiliar has never been safe. There is a certain kind of silence that exists only in a room where everything is in its exact place. The same mug on the same hook, the same street sounds at the same hour. For those who fear newness, this silence is not emptiness, it is presence. It is the presence of safety. To the outside world, this attachment to routine can appear as rigidity. A refusal to try the new restaurant, an anxiety that rises when plans change last minute. A preference for the movie already seen over the one yet unknown. But from the inside, it feels different. It feels like breathing. The familiar becomes a sanctuary because the world outside has proven at some point to be unreliable. In a life once marked by unpredictability, creating a small kingdom of certainty is not a weakness. It is a survival strategy. The mind learns that survival lies in repetition, that nothing bad happened yesterday. So if today is exactly the same, nothing bad will happen again. And so the walls are built. Not to keep the world out, but to keep the self safe inside. The cost of this safety, however, is paid in the currency of possibility. For every door kept closed to the unexpected, a window to the new is sealed shut. The sanctuary becomes a beautiful, quiet prison, and the key has been held for so long, the hand has forgotten it is there. The fear of newness rarely arrives alone. It walks in with an older companion, memory. Not the memory of facts or faces, but the memory the body carries. It's a kind that lives in the tightening of the chest when a phone rings unexpectedly late at night. The kind that wakes you at 3 a.m. with a dread that has no name. To understand this fear, one must look backward, not to blame, but to understand. Somewhere in the architecture of the past, unpredictability was not an adventure. It was a wound. Perhaps it was a childhood where a parent's mood shifted like weather, where love was given and withdrawn without warning. Perhaps it was a home where chaos lived in the walls, and the only moments of peace were the ones that repeated. The young mind, in its wisdom, made a quiet calculation. Surprise equals pain. If I cannot predict, I cannot protect. And so it began to cling to what was known. The same song played on repeat, the same route home from school. The same food, the same chair, the same silence. This was not a preference. It was a prayer. A prayer whispered to a world that had proven itself unsafe. Let this moment stay. Let nothing new arrive. The child who needed predictability to survive did not disappear when childhood ended. They simply grew taller. And they carried the prayer with them long after the danger had passed, still waiting for the other shoe to drop, still believing that the unfamiliar is just another word for loss. The brain is not a passive observer of life. It is an architect of expectation. Every moment, it draws from the past to build a blueprint of what comes next. This is its oldest task: to predict, to prepare, to protect. For most, this happens beneath awareness. For those who fear newness, it happens at the volume of a scream. When something unfamiliar appears, the brain does not first ask, "Is this opportunity?" It asks, "Is this threat?" In a fraction of a second, it scans its archive. If the archive holds memories of unpredictability as pain, the alarm sounds. The amygdala, that small, ancient sentinel, floods the body with signals to fight, flee, or freeze. This is the prediction trap. The brain, trying to keep you safe, mistakes a new beginning for an old ending. A kind stranger becomes a potential betrayer. A new job becomes a looming failure. An invitation to try something different becomes a door to humiliation. And so the body reacts before the mind can reason. The palms sweat, the stomach tightens. The thought arrives like a reflex. No, not that. Not new. What looks like resistance is actually the body trying to protect itself from a danger that no longer exists. The past has become a prophecy. And the brain, faithful to its duty, is determined to make it come true, again and again, until something gently interrupts the pattern. There is a grief that lives inside the fear of newness. It is not a loud grief. It does not wail or protest. It is the quiet kind. The kind that settles in the chest on Sunday evenings, when the week ahead feels like a repetition of the week before. The kind that whispers, "Is this all?" To fear the new is to carry the weight of the untraveled path. The path not taken because the taking required a step into the unknown. The conversation never started. The city never visited. The version of yourself that might have been had you said yes instead of no. This is the inner conflict at the heart of the fear. The part that craves safety and the part that craves life, standing on opposite sides of a door, neither willing to move. One says, "Stay. It is safe here." The other says, "But I am slowly disappearing." And so there is a peculiar kind of mourning. Not for what was lost, but for what was never allowed to begin. The relationships that remained imagined. The talents that stayed hidden. The quiet accumulation of all the moments that could have been, but were not. This is not a failure of courage. 'Tis a failure of trust. Trust that the self could survive the unfamiliar. And so the untraveled path remains untraveled, and the heart learns to live with a certain heaviness. A heaviness that is not despair, but the slow, steady weight of a life lived smaller than it was meant to be. Healing from the fear of newness does not arrive as a revelation. It does not come with drums or declarations. It comes quietly, on a Tuesday afternoon, in a decision so small it barely registers as a decision at all. A different brand of tea, a walk taken on the other side of the street, a reply sent without editing it 3 times. These tiny, almost invisible moments are the true architecture of change. They are not leaps. They are steps so gentle the brain does not recognize them as threats. In these moments, something shifts. The brain, expecting catastrophe, receives instead a soft surprise. I tried something new, and nothing bad happened. The amygdala, so accustomed to sounding the alarm, pauses. It listens, it waits, and then, slowly, it begins to learn. This is the rewriting of an old story, not through force, but through the repetition of tiny moments of safety. Each small step is a letter in a new language, a language where new does not mean dangerous, where unfamiliar does not mean unsafe. The body begins to trust again, not because the world has changed, but because experience has gently corrected the past. There is no applause for these steps. No one witnesses them but the self, and yet they are the most courageous acts a person can take, for they are the tiny cracks in the wall of the sanctuary, the first light entering a room that has been dark for a very long time. There comes a point in the journey where the question shifts. It is no longer, "How do I make the fear go away?" It becomes, "What if safety is not a place, but a feeling I carry with me?" This is the quiet revolution, the moment the inner architecture begins to rearrange itself. For so long, safety was external, found in routines, in walls, in the predictable rhythm of days. But walls, once necessary, can begin to feel like cages, and the self, once protected, begins to long for air. Rewriting the story of safety requires a new definition. Safety is no longer the absence of change. It is the presence of trust. Trust that if something goes wrong, you will find your way. Trust that uncertainty, while uncomfortable, is not unsurvivable. Trust that you have navigated the unknown before, in small ways, in tiny ways, and you are still here. This is not a forgetting of the past. The past remains. The childhood chaos, the unpredictable love, the wounds that taught caution as survival. Those memories do not disappear. but they no longer write the future. They become history, not prophecy. The brain slowly begins to form new pathways. New experiences layer over old fears. Each tolerated unfamiliar moment is a thread in a new tapestry, one where safety is not a walled garden, but an internal compass. The world remains uncertain, but the self, at last, feels steady enough to meet it. Safety, finally, is understood. It was never in the routine. It was always in you. There is a courage that goes unnoticed in the world. It does not stand on podiums or receive medals, lives in the ordinary moments, in the person who, despite every instinct to retreat, chooses to remain present to life. To stay open when closing has been the only reliable protection is an act of quiet heroism. It means waking each day to a world that cannot be controlled and deciding, again and again, to meet it anyway. Not with grand gestures, but with tiny permissions. Permission to feel, permission to try, permission to be surprised. The fear of newness may never fully dissolve. Perhaps it does not need to. It is, after all, an old friend who once kept you safe. But now, it walks beside you rather than in front of you. It warns, but does not command. It remembers the past, but does not demand you live there. And so you move forward, not without fear, but with fear as a companion rather than a cage. You learn that newness, even when it brings discomfort, also brings growth. That the unfamiliar, even when it frightens, also holds the possibility of joy. There is no final destination in this journey. No moment when the fear is gone and the doors are all open. But there is something else. There is the quiet knowing that you have touched the edge of your own becoming, that you have, in tiny ways, chosen life over safety. And that choosing, repeated 1,000 times, is what it means to be free. The world remains uncertain, but you remain open. And that is enough. Thank you for being here till the very end. Now we'd love to hear from you. Where in the world are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. It helps us connect with like-minded peoples like you, and helps the algorithm share these stories with others who might need them. Like and subscribe if you'd like to stay part of the Psych Paint community, and thanks for watching.